and welcome to Voices Unhindered. I'm Kristal Jenkinson. On this show, I give a unique perspective and listening ear to voices that often go unheard. I want everyone to know that you are not alone and that your voice and story matters. On Voices Unhindered this week, I will be speaking on the second part of the two-part series on how to recognize and how to break free from a narcissistic abusive relationship. I will be going through 10 steps on how I broke free and how they're applicable to any relational form of narcissistic abuse. I hope you enjoy listening to this episode. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Voices Unhindered. I am doing another solo show of how to break free from a narcissistic relationship, which is a part 2 and a follow-up from my last episode, which was on how to recognize a narcissistic relationship. Please subscribe to my Patreon. You can have a free subscription and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which will be in the description box and the links will be below. I have 10 steps on how to break free from a narcissistic relationship. So I just wanted to say, starting off, this is sometimes can be a process and it can sometimes be like hard. It's really not easy because obviously your identity has changed because you've been in this relationship for so long. You believe something about yourself that may not necessarily be true, and your eyes have to be open to see that your identity is not wrapped up in this person anymore. You have to see that your identity is actually outside of what this person offers you. Number 1 is you break the soul tie that you have with the narcissistic person. So if you have anything that this person gave you, for example, like if they gave you jewelry, if they gave you some clothes, if they gave you even like a card or a letter or anything like that, I would throw it away. So for example, when I was in a narcissistic relationship with my daughter's biological dad, he on the second date, we'd had a long-term relationship over social media a lot of the time. We met at a working environment and then he kind of had to move away because he was an illegal immigrant and had all these issues. He was working illegally and things like that. And then most of the time it was just conversing through like Facebook. And the second date that he actually came to meet me was the day when he gave me a necklace and 2 like earrings. I thought, why would you give me that? Like, like it's just not right. Like we don't know each other that well. And that is usually a good sign that that's called flattery or love bombing at the beginning. Often it's called that. And it is not, it's not actually healthy because it usually means that that person expects something back and that they are trying to almost like gain something from you. So that was the only like thing he ever gave me. But anyways, to me, and I had to throw those away. I didn't sell them. I just threw them away because I wanted to break the soul tie I had with him. When he was in prison, he was about to be deported. He went into Waikaria prison up north and he wrote me all these letters while he was in prison. And they're very emotional, very like futuristic, like we're going to be together, like if it's God's plan. He talked about God a lot in his, because he knew that obviously God and Jesus, my faith is important to me. So he'd play that into all his messages and be like, if God wants us, I'm sure God wants us to be together. I was just kind of sucked into that, through that kind of language and things like that. And I couldn't really discern the spirit behind the whole thing. That was number 1. Number 2 is to forgive them. So release them to God and yourself. So release yourself to God, forgive them, and forgive yourself. So this is really easy to say. It's a really important part of your healing journey because if you don't forgive this person, they're going to have a hold of your life. Like they're going to control you in a way. And that's the very thing that they wanted to do in the beginning, is control you. So if you don't forgive them, you're holding a part of yourself hostage because of your choice to not forgive them. So you're hurting yourself twice. And that's definitely not God's best for you. If you can't forgive them, ask God to help you to forgive them. And I would also suggest like prayer if you believe in God, and just to ask God, well, for me, it's Jesus. Like ask him to, and call out the trauma stored in trauma can actually be stored in your gut, your brain, and your muscle memory. And I just recommend that you actually speak this and say, get out of my get out of my gut, get out of my brain, get out of my muscle memory, because trauma, it actually can live in your body and your soul. So yeah, call out those memories, pretty much just a desire to just give it to God, and He will make your wrongs right. Like if anyone wronged you, this obviously relationship was completely wrong, and yeah, that's the only thing you can do. Actually, we can't forgive on our own. We actually need to be able to receive something, to be able to give it. And unless you forgive yourself, obviously you can't forgive this person. So yeah, forgive yourself. And number 3 is don't allow them to feed off you by responding to the energy. So they may come back around again a few times. Like, for example, with my daughter's biological dad, when I blocked him off social media and things like that, every a few years he kind of says, do you still want to be with me? I want you to reply in a few days' time. If you want to marry me, I've got to think about getting married to someone else. And he kind of gave me this like bait, like he wanted me to say like, oh no, don't marry anyone else, I want to marry you. Because he's kind of the narcissist is kind of looking for this way to keep drawing you back in so they can feed off of you. And I would just suggest, like, don't allow them to feed off of your energy by responding. So they always try to provoke you. They try to provoke emotions from you. And I recommend playing dead. Like, I know it's easier said than done, but like, don't show any emotion toward them. Like, or they might say, do you still love me? Like, that's what he would say. Or and it's just a trap to try and get you back into their web. They actually don't know how to love. They actually never will. That's what you should assume. They actually never will. Even though you're always hoping that they'll love you, you kind of have to accept. There's this Dr. Romani, she talks about narcissism. She's a therapist, and she talks about radical acceptance. And I think that's a great way to put it. Like, you have to radically accept that this person won't change and that you're pretty much better off without them. That's also kind of ties into like the idea that Dr. Romani talks about, going no contact with a person can accelerate your healing faster than anything else. Because if you think about it, this person is toxic, and by cutting them off, you're not feeding into that toxic cycle anymore. You're not feeding their demons anymore. You're not feeding that demonic altar anymore of lies and witchcraft. They're trying to manipulate you. That's all they know how to do. It takes radical acceptance and it's kind of stepping back outside of yourself and thinking, it can be really hard to do. Number 4 is don't highlight the good times. So I have been guilty of doing this quite often. I have looked back on my daughter's biological dad, my relationship with him, and thought, oh, but it was so nice when you guys went to the beach. Or like there'd be a few times a year he'd see me when we were dating in New Zealand. I just think about like how I'd look forward to seeing him, and then, he'd be gone for ages because he was obviously illegal and he had to live in a certain area in New Zealand to be able to get fed and things like that and live here undercover kind of. And that was like it was exciting for me. I was like looking forward to seeing him. I was looking forward to like the thrill of it all. And then he'd be like, oh, we've got a bright future together, and like, I'm going to give you a home and a family. I think I mentioned this in my last episode. And there's just a real trap in just highlighting the good times and overlooking, kind of denying all the times that you kind of push or disassociate with in a way, or push to the back of your mind, that the times they've abused you, the times they've threatened you, the times they've devalued you, or said, you shouldn't, like, told you not to pursue your dreams, or you don't need to go to uni and finish that degree, or you don't need to work. I'll be the one. He said to me, like, you don't need to work. I'll be earning so much money. And like, it was the complete opposite. Like, he was literally taking everything from me, like all my savings financially. He'd like threatened me into paying half of his deportation fee to come back when I was in India. So I was there for 8 months. I went back and forth. Obviously, I was paying for this all from my savings, and I was living with my grandparents at the time. And he'd pressured me to pay like $5,000. This is so embarrassing, but he pressured me to pay all my savings, like most of my savings, to him so that we could apply for him to come back to New Zealand. And I just remember feeling such a disgusting feeling in my stomach. I was like, did I just allow this person to do this to me? And I was just so depressed after. And I was like, oh God, I know that wasn't right. Like, and I know what he's doing is not right. And I just thought, I'm not going to get that back. Like, even though he'd promised me, like, you know, we're going to be together, our money's one, we're one, I'm going to pay you back. And there wasn't just that time, there was other times, like when I had my daughter over here, he wanted me to pay for him so he didn't have to work. That is so crazy. Like, he wanted me to pay part of my, like, benefit that I got on the sole parent benefit to him. When you have a baby, you get, like, maternity leave. Like, part of it was for him. And I can't believe that I did that. But that was how bad the abuse was, and how, like, soul tied I was to him. And I thought that we were one and he was my responsibility. And, like, I was his mum pretty much. Like, that's what I felt like. Like, when I was over in India, I was, like, doing his washing. I was, like, doing everything that, like, you know, a mum would do. And yet I was getting nothing back. Like, it was just crazy. Anyways, so yeah, give yourself time to work on yourself and you'll begin to see the relationship differently. So, I suggest, like, having some time away from this person and just beginning to self-reflect and think, is this the direction I really want my life to go in? Is what this person promising me, is it, like, have they ever delivered? Like, have they ever delivered one of their promises or what they've said? Or has it always been disappointment? Do you feel a wave of disappointment, like a steady wave of disappointment throughout the relationship? Or is it like, despite all the highs and lows, like, they might give you a little something here and there, or, like, show a little bit of love and affection, and then, like, there'd be just, like, another blow up. But despite all that, there's this deep kind of depression and feeling like, oh my gosh, am I going to pursue what, you know you're good at, or what you have always wanted to do, whether it's, like, playing the piano, whether it's, like, writing that book, or, like, studying and bettering yourself. Is this person driving you closer to what your purpose or your calling or what you're passionate about is? Do they have an alignment with your values, or are they taking you away from what you believe was most important to you? That's a great question to ask when you kind of have a retreat from this person, like, have some time out and, really think. If you can get away from this person, I know it's really hard to say that because in narcissistic relationships, when you're, like, it's very soon, like, you can get quite entangled with them very quick. And I think that's part of their whole plan, is, like, they want to trap you into their little web of lies so quickly that you can't get out. Kind of like, I'm just thinking of, like, a spider web and, like, a fly stuck in there. Like, they just want you stuck pretty much. Yeah, so I know it's easier said than done, but, like, where there's a will, there's a way. Like, I believe it's so crazy because just before COVID, the whole world locked down in 2020. My grandma died 3 months after I came back from New Zealand, by the way, in June. I came back in February. 2 weeks later, the whole world shut down. So I came back in February from India. There were so many times I wanted to leave, and I was, like, booking flights and cancelling them and then booking them, and then he wouldn't take me to the airport, so there was, like, money lost and things like that. It was, like, an 8-hour drive from his house to the airport, and, like, it was just so hard. I just felt like I'd never be able to leave. But I believe that was God. Like, he allowed me to come back 3 months before my grandma passed, who was, like, my closest friend and, like, mom to me. And it was by God's grace that I'm obviously still here, alive, and still, and I'm living, I'm wanting to live my best life now. And I kind of knew in my spirit, like, this is the last time I'll see this person. There was such a, like, soul tie to this person, and I was like, I have to leave despite how much it hurts. And there is a grief of losing someone, and then there's a grief of, like, realizing, no, the fantasy of someone, like, this person wasn't who I created in my mind to be. This person wasn't who they said they were. And to come into acceptance with reality, like, is a hard thing to do. It's so powerful when you do it. And despite all, like, the money I lost and obviously time and things that this person stole from me, they stole my value, they stole relationships that I could have had, opportunities. You can grow from this, you can come out stronger, and you can be even stronger and more motivated in your purpose and in your life by seeing this and having a greater empathy for people. Yeah, so it's never too late to come out of it. Number 5 is build your identity without them. This kind of ties into number 4. So build your identity without them. Replace their lies about you that you believed with the truth. And for me, it's pretty Bible-based because I'm obviously a believer. and my faith is very important to me. And I don't think I wouldn't be here without Jesus. Like, He's saved me from really close to near-death experiences. This person, and not just him, but others that I've been in relationships with, there were times I could have died. Like, there was a lot of abuse of relationships, not just narcissistic. There was all the other types of abuse as well. And this person was just kind of like the cherry on the top, like where I realized like I've got to take a good look at my life. And especially when my daughter came, I was like, things have got to change. And it didn't change straight away. Like, I still made some mistakes after that. I'd like relapse into like old ways of behavior and believing. But yeah, I believe obviously it's been God that's seen me through. And I have learned, like, I went back to uni, I studied, and then that's not for everyone. Like, I'm not saying that's the way to go or anything. I'm just saying you have to do what you feel is on your heart, that God put in your heart and your spirit, what you're good at, and pursue that, because that's usually an indication of what you're put here on earth to do. So, yeah, and your identity, just keep building it apart from this person. Like, when you're with this person, like this narcissistic abuse, especially if it's like parental and things like that, like growing up with a narcissistic mother, they might have told you like all these lies about you, and you actually have to pull them down and replace them with the truth. And to me, the truth is what the Bible says, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that He knew the plans He had for us. He knows the plans He has for us, and He knew every day of our life before we were born. So God already, before He created you, He had an intention for you. He had a purpose. He knew what you were good at, and He knew why He made you. So like, I always take it back to the Bible on finding my identity, who I really am, outside of all the other voices in this world. And number 6 is don't rush into another relationship, because this obviously, all relationships can impact your identity, your sense of identity, and being with the wrong people feeds into the cycle of abuse, because you're believing what these people are telling you and acting around you to be who you are, but you're not that. So relationships are so important when they kind of go hand in hand with your identity. Like, as you begin to realize who you are, you'll begin to attract those people into your life. When you don't know who you are, like for me, for example, when I didn't know who I was just like, I didn't know like who my like real friends were. I didn't know what I was attracting, like the types of guys that I was attracting. I was like, what the heck? Like, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my own value. And I think that it's so important to like have that time without anyone else, like where you just kind of work on your own self-reflect, therapy, if that works for you, writing, journaling. Yeah, and then number 7 is accept and forgive yourself. I think this ties into forgiving them. Yeah, so it's really like you have to come to terms. Like, there's been time that was wasted, relationships that was sabotaged, and like opportunities that you kind of shrunk back from or said no to because of this person, things you wanted to do in life. That's a very huge one, and that kind of comes in with understanding your identity as well. Just having compassion for yourself is so important, because like you can have compassion for other people and empathy, and I think the most important person to have empathy for is yourself when you've been through a lot of abuse, especially because it's like everyone else told you like you weren't going to amount to anything. Everyone else told you like, you're just here to please me, and that's what you always have done, like learn to please people, and people took advantage of you. And so the most important thing is to love yourself and see all the good qualities about you, and then know your boundaries after that, and realize it's not you, it's those people, but you're aware of it now, like what has actually happened. And number 8 is find your purpose, calling, and work towards that. So like I said, just about your gifts and talents, usually pointing you towards your purpose, your higher purpose, your calling, what you were put here on earth to do. What motivates you, sparks creativity in you. So for me, my purpose now is obviously caring for my daughter, and then using the gifts that God's given me with like journalism and writing, and like just sharing my testimony, sharing other people's testimonies. Okay, so number 9, this leads me to number 9, fasting and prayer. if done by faith. So whether you're like a Christian or not, fasting actually has a lot of benefits that I've recently been tapping into myself. And it's so interesting because it's so overlooked, but now I think people are becoming more aware of the benefits of fasting. Like it gives your body a whole rest and a kind of like a rest reset. So when you're asleep, your body obviously fasts, and then sometimes like your body needs to obviously fast longer because it actually kills old bad cells in your body. The process of autophagy, where when you fast for 24 hours or more, it can reverse like damaged cells, and you can do that through like exercise, but fasting is one of the main ways to get autophagy. And not only does it have benefits for the body, it has benefits for the soul and spirit. I feel like things become clearer to me when I fast. Like I just have more motivation to clear out the clutter. It's almost like when your body does that, your whole like focus shifts towards the things that you're supposed to be doing. If your mind's blurry, if you're not really sure where you're going, or you need to like have clarity about things, I believe fasting is a great way to start. And if it's done with prayer and faith, as the Bible says, these things only come out by prayer and fasting. I think it's Matthew 17:21. It says that in the Bible. Yeah, Matthew 17:21 is the one that it says these things only come out by prayer and fasting. And a lot of translations, the newer ones, have taken it out, and makes you wonder why. Yeah, and the King James, New King James, they didn't take it out. So, yeah. Number 10 is accept a new reality. So, like, this is really hard to do. Like, with all the things I've said, they're all well and good things, but you actually have to accept that you were living in a fantasy world. Like, I know it sounds crazy, and it sounds hard to accept that, but like, you were living in a reality, a false reality of where you believe, like this person probably said, oh, I'm gonna do this for you. So for example, my daughter's dad promised like he'd have his own house, be able to pay for everything. He actually said to the extreme, everything, and it was actually the complete opposite. He couldn't pay for anything, and he never has, and I don't want anything from him either. And that's another point I wanted to raise, is like, there was money that he said that he'd pay me back, right? My daughter's dad. And I felt quite a lot of resentment towards him. I can say that I've forgiven him today because he didn't know what he was doing. Well, I like to think the best of people, but like, he didn't know what he was doing. I like to say he's being obviously influenced by darker things. So and he's not, I don't believe he's in a good place in any way, but I wish him all the best. But the thing is that I kind of like, he had this tie on me. The last tie was like, I always felt like, oh man, I'm only contacting him because I want him to pay me back eventually. So I'll just keep this little string there in case he does pay me back. I blocked him on other social media accounts. But a few years ago even, I was like, oh, I better just, keep being friendly so he can pay me back and things like that. And that's wrong as well. Like, I had to accept the reality, like, I forgive you, I release you, and I'm not going to speak to you even if you don't pay me back, but I forgive you. And like, I'm cool. I don't want anything from you. I don't want to manipulate you. Like, that's just drawing you back into their behavior. So I had to cut that off, like cut off that expectation that like, and that false reality that he is going to pay me back. Cause I'm like, I'm good without that money. I don't need that money that I gave you. Like, I'm good. God's taking care of me. Like, when you think about how God's forgiven, like when I think about how much God's forgiven me, like I should be able to just forgive everyone for anything, like no matter the debt they owe me. Like I thought I was doing well saving up money, but then obviously like it just went just like that because of the type of relationship that I was in. So my money is not being drained like it was. Yeah, I was saying like cut off those things, those little things like where you feel like they owe you something, or they probably owe you heaps, like an apology, like at least. But like, even if you don't get that, like don't hang around to wait for that day. Just accept the reality that they will never apologize. They may never see the hurt that they've caused you. They may never empathize with you. They may never realize how destructive they were in your life and hurtful and unloving and abusive, but forgive them and just move on, because that's the only thing you can do with these types of people. You can't negotiate. You can't try and come to terms with these people. So yeah, that's part of 10 is like accept a new reality, paradigm shift, new set of assumptions, ideas, and perspectives. So these are the assumptions I was talking about, like don't accept, assume. Instead of assuming that they will do this, they will do that, assume that they won't. I know this sounds negative, but it's reality. Like the likelihood is that they won't, based on the pattern of the behavior that they've shown you in the past. It's part of who this person is. They don't want to give. They don't want to pay you back. They don't want to love you. That's who they are. And so pretty much it goes back to like radical acceptance, that that number one point, that this person's behavior will not change and it will not be changed by you. So I had to realize that I'm not the savior of the world, that Jesus is, and I cannot change this person, no matter how much Bible I shove down their throat, no matter how much no matter how much I do for that person or help them, they will not be changed by me. There's a man in the Bible called Paul. He used to be called Saul, and he had a radical encounter with Jesus where he met him on the road to Damascus, and something fell from his eyes. And before that, he was killing Christians. And God can do that with anyone. But assume that is unlikely to happen, especially if this person doesn't really have a desire for change or desire for a higher, to know, their creator or anything like that. So there's also a little Bible story that I wanted to talk about in the Bible that I was just dwelling on before I came in. In 1 Kings 16:29, I'm sure you guys have heard about Ahab and Jezebel, Ahab's called the enabler often in Christian language, and Jezebel the narcissist. So this is kind of like what a narcissistic marriage could look like. Because Ahab married Jezebel, she influenced not only him but all of Israel. So Jezebel wanted to marry Ahab, I believe, because that narcissistic spirit, they want control, power, dominion, and she thought, and they used fear and threats, false accusations, and even murder to get their own way. So Jezebel manipulated circumstances to get her own way. In 1 Kings 21, she even used fasting, which is something that a lot of Christians don't really do. There's some churches that do talk about it, which is great, and then there's others that don't really. They just leave that whole fasting bit out because they just don't want to do that with their flesh. They don't want to die to the flesh, and that's actually part of what the Christian life is dying to your flesh and living for God and letting the Spirit come alive. And so she told everyone not to eat for a day. So that's the power of fasting. Like, you can get stuff done, like whether it's in the kingdom of darkness or whether it's in the kingdom of light. Like, they fast too, like the kingdom of darkness. So in 1 Kings 8-10, Jezebel used 2 false witnesses. They were liars, and they said that Naboth, this was a man that lived next door to Jezebel and Ahab, and he had some land, and Ahab was like real depressed because he couldn't have the land. And she's like, "Oh, I'll get it for you. Don't worry, don't be sad." And then so she got 2 liars to publicly say that Naboth had cursed God and the king. And that's exactly what actually she was doing. So often narcissists will accuse you of what they are because that's projection, and that's exactly how they feel about themselves. Then she signed the letters in Ahab's name. So she took control of pretty much Ahab. She overtook him in a way, and Ahab allowed it. And allowing it is just as bad as allowing the behavior to continue, is just as bad as the behavior itself. So another few points I wanted to make was that when I talk about narcissists being threatening, they will often use comparison as well. So like my daughter's biological dad, he would be like purposely trying to provoke me. Like I'd realize like he would try and make me act in my flesh all the time. Like he'd never want me to be in the spirit praying or like reading the word or anything like that. He'd try and make me jealous. He'd compare me to others. He'd be like, my sisters would never do what you do to their husbands. Like they never disrespect their husbands and all these things. Just when I, raised things to him, he'd be like, say things like that. Or he'd be like, I'll tell my dad you did that, or things like that. So just a few signs also of a narcissistic relationship. I know this ties into my previous episode, but if you're becoming suicidal because of this relationship, like feeling like you can't live without them, literally like to the point of you wanting to die, this is a good sign that it's not a healthy relationship. Because this was what happened to me during lockdown. I felt like I couldn't live without this person, and he was making me believe these lies to the point the police actually came around to my house, and because I was sending immigration stuff and all that, and then checking if I was actually okay. And then they said you can live without them, and he really he hated that someone else said that. He actually was listening on the phone that the police officer's like, you can live without him, and he laughed. My daughter's biological dad was like, how come you laughed as well? Like, you can't live without me, and things like that. Like, that's all like toxic behavior. So I have been no contact with my daughter's dad for a few years now, and I have been I've been on my healing journey since I stopped contacting him. Like, I literally feel like I don't need anything from him, and I think that's a powerful place to be. Like, he wanted me to be able to invest so much in that relationship to the point where I would be dependent on him. I would need him. And he wanted that. And it's like, I don't have that anymore. And that's such a freeing thing to be able to raise my daughter on my own without that toxic influence. And another sign was like when I was pregnant, this is a bit off topic, but he said to me, are you going to keep it? I think that's really a telltale sign of like someone's character. He said, are you going to keep it? And I was like thinking, obviously, like it's my daughter, like it's my baby. I'm not even questioning whether I'm going to keep it. So to him, like a child is just like a liability. To him, like a child is just like, if he could use it for his own advancement, he would. Like that's all he thought about was himself. He didn't want anything else except himself, because he wanted to be worshipped pretty much. Like he didn't want anything that would take his place. So yeah, that was a great sign of narcissism. And I realized like the trauma bond thing, like I realized that I was not actually responsible for him. Like I was not his mum. I was not in any way the person who got him into the problems that he was in with, like obviously he was living in New Zealand illegally. He was in trouble with immigration. They were like looking for him because he'd overstayed his visa. He'd also gotten married to some woman that he wasn't actually married, like in a proper relationship with, just for residency. So he'd been deported for 5 years. I felt like all of his problems became my problems. And that was a good sign that this was toxic, because he kind of talked me into like feeling sorry for him, and none of the stuff that he told me wasn't my problem. Yet I felt he made me feel like, and I allowed him to make me feel like it was my problem. That definitely comes back to like something that happened in my childhood where I felt like I was abused, by those who were supposed to love me. I'm not talking about my dad. I'm talking about my biological mum, just her behavior and things like that towards me, where I felt like she was, not a healthy person at all. So there's another thing I wanted to touch on just before finishing this episode. This person, the narcissistic person, just before, when they think that you're about to leave, they may word curse you. So this is what my daughter's dad did to me. And this is not really talked about that much. But there's also a spiritual element to this as well as a natural element. So you have to come out of agreement with anything that they have said over your life, spoken over you, that was not true. Before I left, or I was just about to leave this person, like I was showing that I wasn't interested anymore to my daughter's biological dad, just through messages and things like that. He said to me, if you ever marry anyone else again, she will not be my daughter. Talking about my daughter, well, his biological daughter. He's not ref at all, has never been in her life. So he said this to me. So this is an example of a word curse that I've had to renounce and come out of agreement with. But it was so easy to believe this when I was in his, grip. But then I realized, no, like God has more for me. This is not my reality. This is not my future. I'm not bound to you. Like, even though obviously we spiritually, when you sleep with someone, you're actually bound to them. But obviously I've repented for that and come out of agreement. Another thing is that people, like I mentioned this in my last episode, being with a narcissistic or toxic, abusive person, and you're not married, but then someone else outside like says, oh, you need to get married because then it will be right before God. It doesn't make it any more right before God, marrying someone who's abusive. If it wasn't God's will for you to be with them, it wasn't God's will. Marrying them is not going to make it any more right. It's actually just dishonorable, full stop, and you just have to leave. So yeah, that's kind of what I was being pressured to do, is because often they look like lovely, charming people to others. It's all a facade. They're very good at doing it. And then around you, they show their true colors. And then, so they were like, oh, you should marry this person. It'll be the right thing to do. But it wasn't. And you just kind of have to forgive those people that don't understand. And then just, believe and pray that they'll wake up to really what you were going through. They won't always, but or just have empathy for you, at least knowing that you, or believe you that you were going through this. And it's so important to have people like validate what you actually went through, because all that time, like, you've been questioning your reality. Like, is this really happening to me? Like, are they treating me like this? And how did I get myself into this relationship where I feel like I can't get out? Like, all these thoughts run through your head. So you've been trained and programmed for so long to think, questioning your reality. So like, how, when you come out of that and you're like, someone's like, yes, that did actually happen to you, and like looks in your eyes and like understands, it's so freeing and healing. Yeah, so that was the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about, is like just the lack of empathy. It's all about them kind of thing. Whenever he'd message me, it would always revolve around how can I help him? How can I do more for him? It'd never be about what can I do for you, or how can I help you, or how are you doing with, your daughter on your own. There was like none of that. There was not even a recognition of, what it's like, my life. As I'm a sole mother, I don't have basically any practical family, physical family support. So like, you're so much better off without them. I'm empowered to say that today, and to see how far I've come without this person. I'm pleased with myself. I can say that today, and developed without this person. I actually felt like they were watching me. I actually felt like they were there. And I think that that's part of their whole system of control. Anyways, I just wanted to end this episode with saying thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to my YouTube and my Patreon, which is in the description box below. And also tell a friend about this podcast episode if you think, this is something they're dealing with. I look forward to speaking to you guys in my next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Voices Unhindered. It's great hearing from my listeners. Reach out with questions and comments through Insta or Facebook. Just search for Voices Unhindered. I'm interested to know what other topics and voices you'd like me to bring on the show. Subscribe to Voices Unhindered on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to never miss an episode.